I get fascinated sometimes by these things where I look back. Let me give you an example. A lot of times, like late at night, I will watch TV Land or one of the, I know J&B and I talk about this all the time. One of the older cable channels that show, when I say older, I mean that show old reruns of shows. And some of them I'll watch stuff from even before my time. Barney Miller. I mean, I was alive when it was on, but I, certainly at that time I wasn't, actively watching TV. I was a little kid at that time. Or, even back before that, I mean, obviously Andy Griffith, it goes without saying. But if they are older shows that took place during the time that I was alive, sometimes when I'm watching it, I will become fascinated by trying to figure out what it was that I was actually doing the night that show was airing. Like what was I doing on this night in 1981 or whatever. And last night during Monday Night Football, I began thinking about that because as I was watching the Monday Night Football game, I flashed back to when I was younger and back in the day, back in my day, but back in the day when Monday Night Football was literally you had Sunday games and Monday Night Football. And we all have for example, Eddie Garrison, when you think about the very first years that you really were aware of Monday Night Football and you were excited to be able to stay up for the first half, let's say, or whatever it might be of Monday Night Football, who was the broadcast team that you first think about in those years? I'm going to guess for you it would have been the peak or prime Peyton Manning years of the Colts, right?
Yes.
So that would have been what, like Al Michaels and who? You remember?
I don't know if it was Al Michaels or not. The one that immediately comes to mind that I remember is Ron Jaworski and Mike Tirico.
Okay. So when I think about the very early years of watching Monday Night Football, I think a lot about, Earl Campbell and the Houston Oilers and that epic matchup against the Miami Dolphins. The broadcast team was Frank Gifford and Don Meredith and Howard Cosell. I mean, that's the really faint memories. And, the Washington Redskins were on a lot on Monday Night Football. The Raiders were on a lot on Monday Night Football. And obviously it goes without saying the Cowboys and the Steelers because they were kind of America's team then. But I think about things that happened on those days as I'm watching it. The reason I bring this all up as it relates to your 2025 Indianapolis Colts. Greg Poley, friend of the show. Greg Poley, friend to many. Good dude. Landscaper extraordinaire, security guard extraordinaire at Colts games, etc. You know Greg Poley, right, Eddie? Have you met Greg Poley?
I do know Greg Poley. Great guy. Mr. 300.
So that's right. He's bowled 300 games of 300 in bowling, right?
I think he's bowled 9 perfect games, I think is what he said.
It's pretty impressive.
That is impressive. I'd like to do it just once.
So Greg pointed this out, which is fascinating. I don't know about fascinating, but I found it interesting. I vividly recall, as I'm sure many in this market do, the 1997 Indianapolis 500-mile race. Now, in 1997, in the Indy 500, to jog your memory back, that was a year where it looked a lot like today outside. As everybody moved into the 1997 Indy 500 to the Speedway to watch the race. And lo and behold, they got laps in, and then boom, the rain came. So Monday, we all sloshed our way back through the puddles, through the mud, got back in our seats. More rain. So the 1997 500 on Tuesday, they basically said, you know what, come one, come all. We're just going to open the gates up, and it's a Tuesday, and a lot of you probably have to work, and it's the day after Memorial Day. So if you are able to be here, then come to the race. So I sat up in the stands and watched as they threw the white, yellow, and green flag simultaneously with one lap to go, and Ari Leindeck got on the radio, and ABC picked it up live, and he said, What in the, and then he dropped an F-bomb, and then he corrected himself, and actually he dropped the F-bomb first. What are they doing, basically? And he held off Scott Goodyear to win the Indy 500. On that same day, so as I'm watching old clips of that, and I wonder what else was going on in the world that day. On that same day, which does not seem long ago to me at all. It doesn't. And if a lot of people listening probably are like, oh, yeah, the 97 500, Lion Dyke second win. I remember that well. On that same day in Charlotte, North Carolina, there was a guy being born. There was a guy that was entering the world. There was a guy that in Charlotte, North Carolina, was introduced to the world, and he thought to himself, this is my birth. And somewhere right now, maybe even in my hospital room on television, they have a big race taking place in Indianapolis on this, the day of my birth in 1997. And what I know is this. As I'm being born right here in Charlotte, North Carolina on this, the 27th day of May in 1997, and on the screen there's some big event in Indianapolis, what I know is that's the city where my rebirth will take place. And Daniel Jones is reborn here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And his career, as you saw last night when he was on the Manning cast with Eli and Peyton Manning, and joking about, the fact that, and of course he had, there are ties to the Mannings because of his relationship with, Peyton Manning has a special relationship with David Cutcliffe, who was the coach at Duke when Daniel Jones was there. And Daniel Jones, of course, then getting drafted into the NFL and understudying under Eli Manning and eventually taking over that torch. And being last night on the Manning cast, and I don't know that Daniel Jones, anybody would say or confuse that he has this overly gregarious, overly bubbly, overly fun personality. He kind of feels like the football equivalent at the quarterbacking position of Curt Cignetti at the coaching position. Like all business, straightforward, can't really read the room, probably would be a good poker player, etc. But last night he goes on the Manning cast and they're joking around and he's joking with Eli. Eli made the joke of like, you're already the best quarterback in Indianapolis Colts history, and Peyton laughs about it. And they went on and talked and joked a little bit about, some of the challenges that Eli had for him as a quarterback and et cetera. But as I'm watching it, and it's Monday Night Football, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking back to the Monday Night Footballs of yesteryear, and then I see Greg Poley's tweet about the Indy 500, and I'm like, it all has come full circle now for Daniel Jones here in Indianapolis. And is this, and I guess this is the big question that we will wait to see, is this in fact, in the case of Daniel Jones, is this short-lived? Is this we'll go with Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick. There have been quarterbacks you've seen where it feels like they have a second lease on life and it is a brand new thing. And then or is it in fact that Daniel Jones was in a bad situation? Was in a bad situation and was unfairly tabbed as being the reason that the New York Giants were struggling? And did Chris Ballard have the foresight to say, this guy can play? This guy can play. This guy has the pedigree. This guy has the size. This guy has the vision. This guy has the legs. This guy can play. All we've got to do is put him in the right spot. Or did Chris Ballard say, I don't know whether Daniel Jones can play. I don't know how good this guy is. What I do know is this. He has enough starts under his belt in a situation that you can say was one that was of question whether or not he was put in a good spot. And so I can get away with signing him to a one-year deal, and this is going to push my franchise quarterback in Anthony Richardson. This is going to wake up Anthony Richardson. This is not some guy that is like 42 years old. This is not some guy that was basically a glorified practice squad player. This is a guy that when I bring him in, the reason I'm bringing in Daniel Jones is because it's going to wake up Anthony Richardson finally, and the benching after the helmet tap didn't necessarily work, and the coming out and making a couple of statements about him hasn't worked, and we need somebody that is going to push him and to show him what it's like to operationally be in charge of all of it. And then he got here, and they said, you know what? This guy's above and beyond just a guy that's pushing Anthony Richardson. This is a guy that can be our starter, and here he is. And the Colts are 3-0. And lo and behold, Daniel Jones is doing the Manning cast, and Daniel Jones is reborn. He's reborn in Indianapolis. And yet you get super excited about it, then you think, okay, we're 20% the way through the season. There's a lot of football remaining to be played. But so far, so good, and you got to like what you see. My name is Jake Query, Eddie Garrison. Eddie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm tired. I had one of those. This is a sleep deprivation Tuesday. I'll warn everybody now.
Do you need one of those energy drinks from Java House, Jake? I think I've got a pod.
Do you have a
at
pod?
my desk? You want one? Want me to go get you one?
That would be the Wrangler energy.
Wait, are you allowed to have a Wrangler energy? I didn't know with the heart condition.
But here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, probably some sort of a caffeine would help me, but do you ever have one of those nights where I call it sleep anxiety?
Yes.
Where you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, please, I need to go to sleep now. And then before you know it, you're staring at the ceiling and you're like, oh my goodness, if I fall asleep right now, I'll get 5 hours. Okay. 4 is better because your body goes in the cycles of 4. So if I fall asleep right now, I'll get 4 hours. Okay, 3 hours is I can work on 3 hours. You know what? 2 hours is at least divisible into 4, and the body works on that cycle, so 2 will be good. And then before you know it, you're like, I think I got an hour and a half of sleep. I have no idea why I woke up 45 minutes after going to bed, but I sat there and stared at the ceiling, and that means that I came up with all kinds of things running through my head, which we'll go over today. And I know that excites you tremendously, Eddie. Tremendously,
yes.
Right? Did you watch last night's Monday Night Football game?
Sure did.
Interesting because...
No, Jake, did you flip over to the Manning cast when Daniel Jones was on, or did you watch with Troy Buck? Troy. Yep. Can I not? Oh my goodness, I'm going to stop talking.
Joe Buck and Troy Aikman.
Thank you, Troy Buck and Joe Aikman is what
I did watch the primary, and then I saw the Manning cast portion of it after the fact.
Okay, same.
The thing that is fascinating in the way that the AFC, and it's very early. I mean, it's so early that it's almost dangerous to begin like forecasting the way things can go. But nonetheless, you watch things and your mind starts racing and you start convincing yourself that things are going to go this way or that way. And, it's like when the lottery, it's like when the Powerball gets up to $2 billion and you start convincing yourself that you can, oh man, I'm telling you, like if the numbers fall just the right way here, I really think this is the winning combo. I mean, you start getting ahead of yourself. And to an extent in the NFL, that can happen, okay? But the AFC, if you were to make a list, Eddie, now I want you to do me a favor here, okay? There's a reason I bring this up. I want you to out loud tell me.
Okay.
I don't think about records. Don't think about the standings right now. Just think about just going into it naturally, the teams that you assumed were going to be the upper echelon of the AFC. Your 5 best AFC teams based on your assumptions, your anticipations, their roster, their last 2 years, all things considered. Having nothing to do with the injuries right now, I'm talking about effective 3 weeks ago. You would have, off the top of your head, said what teams in the AFC?
I would have said the Chiefs.
Okay.
The Ravens.
Okay.
The Bills.
Okay. Cincy?
No, because I had major questions about their defense. The Chargers.
Okay.
Those are the first 4 that come to mind.
Okay.
That 5th one is just kind of up in the air.
Throw one at me.
Denver probably would have been the 5th.
Okay.
Just how they closed last year and
so
whatnot.
with that, Chargers 3-0. Cincinnati, I think a lot of people would have said was up there because they have weapons galore. But no Joe Burrow, right? So Cincinnati, you give like kind of a check mark of we'll check back on them. Baltimore. What's Baltimore's record right now? Through
1-2.
Kansas City.
Also 1-2. They play each other this week.
And then Buffalo is 3-0.
Isn't that wild that one of those two teams is going to be 1-3 after 4 weeks?
And here's the thing. So then you look at the Colts and you go, okay, it's 3 games. And realistically, the Colts only for a leap of faith, or actually a leverage of faith. The Colts are 3-0 instead of 2-1. And maybe we're having a totally different conversation if they're 2-1, because we would look at it and say they literally so far have beaten the 2 worst teams in the league. And I don't know if you'd say that about Miami now, but I mean, going into it, there were a lot of question marks about Miami. Clearly, Tennessee is not very good. But they're 2-1, and now your mind starts racing because you think to yourself, not only are they 3-0, I think the schedule is pretty favorable the way it lays out for them. And those that you assume are going to be the upper echelon, upper-seeded home field advantage teams, some of which already have stubbed their toe or have an issue.
Did you just bang your knee on the...
That's all right.
You all right?
When you're 6'4", you bang your knee all over the place.
Okay, I was just making sure you're
used
okay.
to it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Look at the schedule. The Rams are going to be tough out in L.A. No question about that. But then you come back, you got the Raiders and the Cardinals at home. Now, the Cardinals are one of those, we're going to get into this other group here in just a second, that might fall into that grouping. And then you go back out to L.A. and you play the Chargers. Not easy. But then, boom, you come right back, you get Tennessee at home, so you got a bye week, right? You get 2 bye weeks this year, which is nice. Okay? One of them comes just before Thanksgiving, and the other comes just after going back out west. Then you get Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. Is Pittsburgh any good?
They needed 5 turnovers to win that game against New England. 2 of them coming at the goal line.
Atlanta at home. Is Atlanta any good?
That game is the Bayern Munich game, by the way.
Yeah. Or I'm sorry. I keep saying at home. So,
or Germany.
You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. The schedule that I have that the Colts put out.
Berlin.
The schedule has the game with Atlanta. They have it like in the white as a home game. I'm going to put little markers here and turn it into like a little German-looking flag to keep reminding myself, because I've said this like 7 times now that's. But you get my point. I think the schedule is favorable for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now.
And then you go to Kansas City coming off the bye week.
The thing that is also curious is this.
I'm curious how your art looks after they're over there. So showed up to the camera.
Well, I don't have red and yellow ink. So I'm just nothing special. I just did it this way.
Okay.
I think if you were doing sports talk radio right now, and this is the reality of the situation, I'm going to ask you for, again, I want you to block out, and those of you at home can participate as well. Block out the records, block out what you know you have seen so far realistically, the circumstances, I guess I should say. But give me the 3 or 4 teams in the NFL right now that you know they're not terrible, and they might be good, but you're not convinced of it, and you're just kind of like, they're not – I'm not going to completely laugh at them and snicker at them, but they might be decent, but I still need to see more. Give me 3 or 4 that fit in that category.
I know it's only 3 weeks, but the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay, fair.
Could that be one?
That's fair. Give me another one.
The Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
And I guess the Pittsburgh Steelers would fall into that category.
Yeah, Pittsburgh probably, although you feel like Pittsburgh's probably aging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh it feels destined to once again be the end of the year going into the final week, and it's like, okay, here it is. This is the game where we figure out whether or not they're going to be 500 for Mike Tomlin again or above 500, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that in this grouping, you have to put Arizona, right? I mean, they're 2-1. Kyler Murray's a nice player, but are they good? I don't know. How much do we know about Arizona?
I mean, they beat the two worst teams in the league by just showing up.
So Arizona is the NFC Indianapolis Colts, right? If you're doing sports talk radio right now in Phoenix, if you're doing sports talk radio right now in Atlanta, if you're doing which, by the way, do they do sports talk radio in Atlanta? Nobody's a sports fan in Atlanta, right? It's all just transients. Nobody's calling in about the Falcons, right?
I bet there are people calling in about the Falcons after getting shut out by the Panthers.
They're calling in about the Braves, and then they
well, the Braves are out of the playoffs, so that
understood. But the Braves are a big deal down there. But what I'm saying is, with the Falcons, no one's actually a Falcons fan in Atlanta. They just go to Falcons games to see the team that they grew up watching because nobody's from Atlanta. They're like, yeah, I work for Coca-Cola, so now I live down here. But I digress. Arizona. If you're doing shows in any of those other markets, you're probably saying that about Indianapolis. You're probably saying about the Colts, like, are they good? They're 3-0. And then you look at the numbers and you go, yeah, but they beat Miami and they beat Tennessee. But good teams, Eddie, beat the teams they're supposed to beat. That's the thing. A mark of being a good team is that you just don't stub you take advantage of things that are placed before you. And so far, that's exactly what they've done. And your mind already through and I know it's only been 3 weeks, but through 3 weeks, you already now are starting to stare at it and go, is this really a possibility that – and when you then look at the schedule, okay, and this is what, in your mind, when you think about the – AFC South, which again is the junk drawer of the NFL divisions, right? It's just this Houston that we thought was decent, and they just can't get out of their own way, and Tennessee that is just, I mean, Tennessee is like Tennessee is at this point like a CD.
They're like turning into the Cleveland Browns almost.
Tennessee is the Tennessee Titans in the junk drawer division that is the AFC South. The Tennessee Titans are a 3 doors down CD. It was pretty decent in 2000 or 2002, and yet like it's still you still have it laying around, and you're like, I don't even know where I would play this anymore. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with this, but you haven't thrown it out yet.
I think I have a better comparison for the Colts of the NFC, Jake.
Okay, think about what it is, and then I want you to think about that, and I want you to tell me who it is on the other side, and I'll try to guess it. And I want you to tell me, Eddie, think about this. How many games do you think realistically wins the 2025 AFC South? And there's a reason I ask it. We'll go over that. Stephen Holder going to join us 1 o'clock today, Tuesday edition of Query Company, as Scott Agness joins us as well. The Fever in action tonight. We will preview that. Lot to unpack, lot to get to over the course of the next couple hours, and we will answer those two questions from Eddie on the other side. By the way, we're sitting here talking about the upcoming division, all that. I was reading yesterday on the internet, which is all-knowing. Apparently, the world's ending today. Did you know that?
Wait, what?
Yeah.
It was nice knowing you, Jake.
I know.
I'm glad I'm spending my last days of my life with you.
I mean,
do you feel the same way?
do you think they'll do it before 3, so that at least we don't have to put the full workday in?
Well, I don't know if you would want that. I feel like you would want to go until 3 o'clock, Jake. It's been one last full show with me.
That's right. And then at 3:30, it's boom, it's all done.
By the way, our guy Evan Sherrill sent me a tweet last night, a post on the X-Post Twitter, as you call it. It said the back of my head looked good last night on Channel 13.
Oh, I did see that you got some TV time, right?
It's very hard to keep this melon out of the shot. Am I right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes, you are the walking eclipse.
Thank you.
Okay, how many games do you think it takes to win the AFC South this year? The winner of the AFC South, the record will be what?
11.
So you think 11-6 gets it done, right?
I believe so, because Jacksonville's won twice. They had that heartbreaking loss to Cincinnati, and they only have one win over a divisional team right now, and that was Houston. They haven't played Tennessee yet.
So here's why I ask it. And I know this is like the lamest exercise in radio, but it is topical based on the start. I'm going to name the game, and I just want you to tell me, Eddie, off the top of your head on what you know right now with the Colts, instinctively. No breakdown, no da-da-da, just boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
Boom answer. Win or loss, okay? For the Colts. At the Rams.
Loss.
Raiders at home.
Win.
Cardinals at home.
Win.
At the Chargers.
Loss.
Titans at home.
Win.
At the Steelers.
Win.
Falcons in Berlin.
Win.
Kansas City at Kansas City.
Loss.
Houston at home.
Win.
At Jacksonville.
Loss.
Fair. Okay. Seattle at Seattle.
Loss.
San Francisco at home.
Win.
Jaguars at home.
Win.
At Houston.
At Houston?
Yeah.
Loss.
Okay, so you have them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 remaining wins. That would put them at 11-6. And you believe that wins the division, correct?
Yeah.
That's simply my point is with this start, because they have done what they've done, they put themselves in very good position. And so much the NFL is a game of inches, man, and that the leverage, there's your inches.
Leverage?
What's that?
Leverage?
That's right.
That was the game-winning play for the Colts, right? In week 2?
That's what I mean. The leverage, that's the game of inches right there. Because if they are 2-1 right now, we're probably not having that same conversation, but that's just the way things go. It's fascinating in the NFL. I'm in a weekly pick'em with 3 of my buddies.
Is this a survivor or just like a...
No, it's a confidence pool.
Okay.
And it's cumulative over the course of the year.
Now, how many of you had Green Bay as, your most confident pick?
Nobody had it as the most confident.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the fascinating thing about the NFL is just this past Sunday, for example, as you're sitting there watching over the course of the afternoon, who's the leader for the week and whatever else, it was changing back and forth because there were literally, in the early games on Sunday, there were like 3 games that all were swung by a field goal in the last 90 seconds, and they happened within like 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah.
The parity is... It really is. I mean, and that's the NFL is set up that way, and that's why the NFL has aside from gambling, aside from fantasy sports, and aside from the fact that for the better part of our culture, the NFL has been a one-day domination sport. Another factor as to why it is the 8,000-pound gorilla is the fact that it is designed that way, where every single franchise at the beginning of the year feels like they have a chance that it's going to be there, that they are going to be there that season's Indianapolis Colts or whoever it may be, where you're just like, oh my, the Minnesota Vikings of a couple years ago, where you're like, are they actually going to win 15 games here? Now, you were talking about a team in the NFC that you believe is the equivalent right now of the Colts. Is that right?
That is correct.
Can you define, without telling me the team, what the criteria is that you believe makes it mirror Indianapolis?
Well, they're a team they're one of the 6 teams that is undefeated through 3 weeks of the season.
Okay.
They haven't really played anybody, and they got gifted 2 wins.
They haven't played anybody, and they were gifted 2 wins. Well, it's got to be, and we're talking NFC?
Yes.
It's got to be San Francisco because there's only 2 NFC teams that are unbeaten, right?
There are 3 NFC teams that are unbeaten. That is one of them, and you are incorrect.
Oh, the Tampa Bay Bucks.
You
totally
are correct.
Agree.
Yeah.
Because you kind of forget about them, right?
Yeah, they lucked out against Houston,
but
squeaked out a win against Atlanta.
Here's what Tampa has.
Mike Evans, by the way, going to miss 3 to 4 weeks with a hamstring strain.
What Tampa has that the Colts are hoping they have. I think we can now say, in fact, now is he Heisman winner, number 1 selection, franchise quarterback, multiple Super Bowl attending quarterback level? I don't know. But I think we have enough body of work now to say that Baker Mayfield has a solid home and is a legit top, what would you say, 12 quarterback?
Yeah.
And I think for the Colts, they are hopeful. Certainly they're hopeful, but you would love for that to end up being the same story with Daniel Jones, where you say, you know what? And in Baker's case, there were other stops along the way. But a change of scenery from the franchise that drafted him is what was needed for him to really finally blossom. And I think the Colts would love to be able to say that about Daniel Jones, but again, it is early. One thing that the Colts have done masterfully with Jones.
By the way, Baker Mayfield was 28 when he joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Daniel Jones, 28.
May 27th, his birthday. I know that because 97 Indy 500.
Yep.
But the thing about Jones, Shane Steichen is calling masterfully the plays in the offensive scheme for Daniel Jones. And what the Colts are doing is, you knew going in that they had, Jonathan Taylor and, obviously Tyler Warren was going to be an important target for him and a comfort zone and et cetera. They have brilliantly, and maybe it's Reggie Wayne. Maybe Reggie Wayne deserves a lot of credit because Reggie Wayne, let me tell you something that happened to Reggie Wayne that is an underrated or perhaps or overlooked aspect of what's impacting the Colts right now. 2 things. Number 1, Reggie Wayne, when he came into the NFL as a player, was not a dynamic rookie. And there were murmurs and discussions and questions and whispers around town as to whether or not Reggie Wayne was a bust or a wasted pick. And yes, he was coming into a situation where you had Peyton Manning, but you already had Marvin Harrison and et cetera. So he had time to kind of grow. And then once it took off for Reggie Wayne, you know what kind of player Reggie Wayne was. Could that be like, and I'm not saying that this guy's going to have the career of Reggie Wayne, don't get me wrong, but a year ago we were all ready to write off A.D. Mitchell. And maybe A.D. Mitchell simply needed a wide receiver coach that said, look, you've got to block out the noise because I know what that's like as a rookie to hear all the conversation about how you're not panning out. I've been there. And A.D. Mitchell has not been some breakthrough player for the Colts this year, but I think we've seen he is a guy that is showing that he can contribute. And that's one area perhaps where having Reggie Wayne as your wide receiver coach is paying off for you. But there's another area where I think that Reggie Wayne is paying dividend. And there's another player that is benefiting from it. Now, years ago, I did a radio show here in town, different station. And one day we're sitting there and we're like, we should try to do a players show. Find a player on the Colts to do like a weekly show with. And I said, what about Reggie Wayne? Okay, let's try. So the radio station reached out to, I don't know whether it was AMP or management or somehow of Reggie Wayne, and they're like, yeah, Reggie Wayne will do it. Great. And so the way that we were able to get Reggie Wayne is, I think that truthfully, at that point in his career, a lot of people thought that we were starting to see the introduction of the twilight of Reggie Wayne, the start of the decline of Reggie Wayne. And one of the things that doing that show with Reggie Wayne taught me was how unbelievably prepared, both physically and mentally, he was every week. He knew every single aspect of being a wide receiver in terms of knowing the tendencies of his quarterback, reading the tendencies of the defense he was lining up against. But more importantly, the workouts that he did, it was incredible to me. I mean, he would tell me about how he was up at 5 o'clock in the morning doing extra, doing things on elliptical, whatever, well before he even went into the building, and then spent all day in the building, and then once a week would do the radio show and whatever else, rinse and repeat. And the thorough nature of it all and the dedication to it all was incredible. And during the time in the multiple seasons that I was doing the show with Reggie Wayne, it was either the first or I think it was the first year we did it was the rookie year of Andrew Luck. And Reggie Wayne was the guy that really was facilitating this. Reggie or Andrew Luck was a savant as it is. But Andrew Luck, when he first came in as a rookie in that unbelievable year, in the Chuck Pagano year and the gloves game against the Packers and everything that Reggie Wayne did that year. So much, I think, and Andrew Luck would have been a great quarterback out of the womb as an NFL player if he had Eddie, you and I, and Jimmy Cook as his receivers, right? But he had Reggie Wayne, who was a comfort and guiding force for him. But what Reggie Wayne did that year to not only extend his own career, what Reggie Wayne did that year to help Andrew Luck, what Reggie Wayne did that year to lift the Colts in multiple games and become and further cement himself as a fan favorite in this town. All of those things that Reggie Wayne did as a player, he's now on the coaching staff, and it is paying dividends for the Colts right now. And it's helping Daniel Jones, and it's helping Shane Steichen, and it's helping a particular player that's facilitating for all of that. And I'll tell you what it is that he's doing and why it is an extremely overlooked aspect of this season on the other side. Stephen Holder joined us 18 as well here on a Tuesday. Reggie Wayne, in those years I'm talking about, as he transitioned from being the wide receiver that was the complement to Marvin Harrison, the one that got behind the defense in the Super Bowl, caught the touchdown pass, had dynamic plays, unbelievable catches. In those years with Andrew Luck, what Reggie Wayne did was reinvented himself essentially as a possession receiver. He knew he didn't have the breakaway speed anymore. I remember one of those shows that I did with him talking about a play where I think he got dragged down at like the 5-yard line. He's like, man, I was running for all I had, and that end zone just kept getting further and further away. But he still was an unbelievable target in the intermediate for Andrew Luck because of his ability to, turn right off the line. Obviously, his hands are incredible, to run precise routes, and to make up for what athleticism was starting to go away from him through precision. And Alec Pierce is clearly a very good athlete, has great speed, obviously has great hands. But one of the underrated, overlooked aspects so far of this Colts season is at the time when they needed A.D. Mitchell to really show that he had made the step and was ready to be a secondary piece, they got more time, and A.D. Mitchell got more time of allowing himself more time to grow, and Mitchell is starting to turn the corner a little bit. But the pressure is off of him a little bit because Alec Pierce has reinvented himself a little bit, or maybe just invented himself in general as possession receiver is selling him short, but a short yardage receiver. And a guy that now all of a sudden they're using Pierce in different ways. And just when we thought to ourselves, as I did, when Daniel Jones was named the starter and Alec Pierce is going into a contract year, I thought to myself, well, that took care of that. Did it? Because he's become a really important part of their offense. And I know that right now he's in the protocol, concussion, and we'll find out from Steven if there's anything new on that. But I think that's a wrinkle to their offense that has been a big part of Daniel Jones. What he is doing for the Colts right now is the fact that he is put in a situation where he is allowed to have, or it is facilitated for him to find a comfort zone because of the way that he can spread the ball around between Warren and Jonathan Taylor and Pittman and now Pierce as well. And Pierce move him up that chart in terms of options. I mean, he's no longer like hey, I guess if the play's breaking down, I'll throw it up and hope Alec Pierce goes and gets a guy. He's now he's part of my immediate progressions and early in the progressions read to get him the ball. I mentioned last night, by the way, Eddie, that I couldn't sleep.
Okay.
What do you do when you have when insomnia strikes you? What do you do?
I just lay there and think about life.
What do you do to try to slow down your brain and fall asleep? Like what things do you do when you're like, I've got to get, like I had 10,000 things going through my head. And I was like, I have to somehow get all of this out of my head and just clear my head in general. And so I'm like, I've a lot of times I'll do let me see if I can think of the National Football League standings in order, or the Major League Baseball standings in order. Or, my brain starts going through stuff. And you just think about life at that point?
Yeah, just think about, hey, what do I got to do tomorrow? This, that, and the other. Like, all right, cool. That's what I got to do. And then
my problem is that's what keeps me up, right?
Oh, really?
So I last night at about 3:38 in the morning.
Oh, Jake, I also have home remedies to help me with that issue.
Okay. So last night I thought to myself, okay, nothing's working here. So I'm just going to start doing exercises in my mind. Now, when I mention this on the air right now, and this happens to me every once in a while, okay? I will mention something, and people will say to themselves, well, that's the dumbest. What is this guy talking about? And then invariably and inevitably, later they will say, you mentioned that, and I have to admit, I kept going back to it. I kept thinking about it. Now, here's one that I did last night. You ready?
I'm ready. Did you
I
start counting
sat there
sheep?
and I thought, what's that?
Did you start counting sheep?
I have actually tried doing that before. No, I was sitting there and I began thinking about this, and I thought, I'm going to count through the alphabet, and for every letter of the alphabet, I'm going to name a car manufacturer that begins with that letter. Now, I don't mean model.
What?
I don't mean model. So, like, you drive a Chevy Malibu, correct?
Sure, yeah.
So, I don't mean the M for Malibu. I mean C for Chevrolet. So, I started at A, and I went to Z, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here until I think. And then I went back through the alphabet to do, okay, now I'm going to do, second car, whatever. By my estimation, by my calculation, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 letters of the alphabet that I could not think of a car that starts with that letter. Would you like to guess the letter, Eddie? Give me a letter, and I'll see if you're correct here. Now, you think this is crazy, but now you're going to start thinking about it and go, it's actually a good question. 4 letters that I literally could not think of a car manufacturer that starts that letter.
You?
That is one of them. That is indeed one of them. There might be one. Feel free to send me a text at 317-523-9288 if you can tell me a car. And there's probably like some, like Polish car manufacturer, but I'm talking about like, at least available. Now, defunct is fine. It can be a defunct, but it has to be a car that at some point you could have bought in the United States. U is one. Would you like to guess me another letter here?
Q?
Stephen Holder in 5, by the way.
Q?
No, I can't remember what I came up with for Q, but there was one Q.
Okay. Y?
Yugo.
Oh, that's right.
The Yugo, baby. I'd love to have a Yugo. You could probably buy one right now for like $700. Keep thinking on the other ones. Holder joins us. We'll talk Colts. We'll get the latest in terms of the injury report from the Indianapolis Colts with Stephen Holder of ESPN next. The Ultima, by the way. Ultima's a British sports car with a U. And then I think I was cheating on this one. I don't know where I heard of it, but the Quant, I think that's a prototype, though. I don't think Quant is out yet. That was my cue.
E?
Okay, E is one of them. I couldn't think of one with E.
So you have one more that you could not think of?
Yes. Now, give me a letter that you – just give me another letter here that – and I'll tell you what – just name a letter and I'll tell you what manufacturer it came up with.
V?
Volkswagen.
Yep.
That's the first one that comes to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Volvo
Yeah.
would be another one. Volvos are the safest cars, right? Isn't that right?
I don't know. Z?
Okay, Z is one that that's the last one that I couldn't think of one. There has to be ones, right? I know that there
Zenvo?
are models. What's that?
Zenos and Zenvo?
Zenvo?
Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny is if you go to Europe, you can get like there are certain manufacturers. When I rented a car when we were in Europe, and it was a pretty cool car. And the logo for it was kind of like a Pegasus looking thing, or not? Yeah, a griffin, like a griffin looking thing. You know, the like lion looking dealio with wings.
Yeah.
And it was like a Polish manufacturer, and like they're everywhere.
A Zenos or Zenos, however it's pronounced, is a British automotive company that produces high-performance, lightweight sports cars.
Do you like a Zenos? How fast can you drive in a Zenos? Yes. I like to listen to Oasis in my Zenos.
They went into distribution in 2017.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Still around?
Looks like it.
Stephen Holder's set to join us. Do you think he's bailing because of this conversation? Last night in Monday Night Football,
Would you if you were him?
What's that?
Would you if you were him?
Probably. One thing I think we learned last night, I still think Baltimore's really good, but Detroit, week one was the anomaly. I mean, I think Detroit, Jared Goff, give him credit, man. I've said all along, Jared, especially that year the Lions went to the Super Bowl, Jared Goff looked kind of lost and looked like he couldn't, I don't know what it was. It was like he had never seen different defensive formations before. And then since then, I heard them last night mention on the broadcast that he felt like going to Detroit was one of the best things to happen to his career. And I mean, I'll give him credit for saying that. Maybe he just needed to get away from a change of scenery. Because I've said it before. You grew up, you're a California kid. You play at Cal.
You think you had more one-on-one time with that wife of his?
Are they married now?
Yeah, they have a kid.
And he got very excited when he mentioned that.
Yeah, they just had their first kid.
They did?
Yeah.
So, but you grew up in California, you go to Cal, you're playing for the Rams, you're living in LA, you're starting in the Super Bowl, and then you get traded to Detroit. I mean, nothing against the city of Detroit. Detroit's come a long way, and I'll give them credit. I mean, they're doing what they can to clean things up, turn things around, whatever what have you. But to go from LA to Detroit is you want to talk about culture shock. And yet he has played very well there. They have a lot of weapons. They're fun to watch. And, Baltimore, you still think of Baltimore as the elite of the elite, but
boy, that defense doesn't look as good as you thought it would be.
I know. I'm telling you. But the NFL's a long season, man.
And Lamar was just under duress the entire night. 7 sacks.
Joining us now, a guy that feels like he's under duress every time he comes on this program, I'm sure, from ESPN.com, Stephen Holder joining us. Stephen, let's get right to the first things first here, and that is the Colts injury report. I would assume, obviously, at this point on a Tuesday, there's really no new information on some of those, notably Kenny Moore and Alec Pierce, that are hurt. Sometimes there are also those that we hear about, and you go, wait a minute, I didn't realize that they were under question in terms of their health status. Where do things stand right now in terms of the health of the Colts?
Well, it's pretty apparent at this point, I think, that Kenny Moore is not going to play this week. That's not confirmed. They haven't said that outright, but every indication is that he will not play this week. So I think they're planning for that. Mike Hilton, which that was reported yesterday, that the former Cincinnati Bengals corner, he has joined the practice squad as of today officially, so they can promote him on Sunday if they need him. And remember, he has a history of playing in the slot, and so he has shown the versatility to be able to play in there. Is he the player he used to be? I don't think so. And that's just a reality. But he is experienced, and he could do it on short notice. So that's where they are there. Look, Alec Pierce, you know how these concussions are. You don't know, frankly, until you see how the player responds in the following days. So too early to know. He's got to go through the steps, and he can't really do that for the most part until you get out there and practice. So that process gets underway tomorrow. We'll see if he's even out there. If he has had or I guess if his symptoms have subsided, he can practice, and then he's got to follow the steps, and then we will see where he stands on Friday, Saturday. So that's where we're at right now, but I think you're getting ready to see perhaps Mike Hilton and possibly, if Alec Pierce doesn't play, a little more of A.D. Mitchell.
Steven, I know he has to miss one more game because he was placed on injury reserve prior to the season, but is the anticipation after this week that the 21-day return to action window will be opened for Jalen Carlisle?
What I've heard is that he seems to be somebody who will come back sooner than later once that 4-week time limit has elapsed, and this is the fourth game coming up. And that would be good because I do think linebacker is an issue for them right now. That position or that unit, the depth is just not there, and they don't have a lot of playmaking at that position right now. Carlisle is a guy who has that potential, that playmaking potential, particularly in coverage. And so you go up against a play caller like Sean McVay, and Carlisle won't play this week, but I'm just saying, that's a guy who can exploit your weaknesses, and that is a weakness for the Colts. So it's something to watch for sure.
Stephen, which has been a bigger – Stephen Holder, our guest from ESPN.com, which has been a bigger surprise for you in terms of this offense? And by that I mean in the short yardage passing game and a short yardage target for Daniel Jones. Jonathan Taylor or Alec Pierce?
I would say Jonathan Taylor maybe because I think if you look at the last couple of years, his receiving numbers have been down pretty substantially. He caught a lot of passes in his first 2 years because he was on the field all the time. But the last 2 years, since Shane Steichen, it's coincided with Shane Steichen being here, and I don't know that it's Shane specifically, but for whatever reason, he hasn't caught a lot of passes, and I think it's an opportunity missed. I always thought that. I think some of the biggest plays in Jonathan Taylor's career have come in the passing game. I talked to him about this recently. You can go back to, there was that Carson Wentz game in Baltimore a few years back where they hit him on a check down or a screen, I can't remember, and he went about 70 yards to the house. There was a screen in Houston. I think maybe Phillip Rivers through this, I believe, maybe as a rookie for Jonathan Taylor's rookie year, took that one, 60 yards or so to the end zone. His playmaking ability is the same whether you throw it to him or he runs it, right? If he's in the open field, he's in the open field. So I just think there were some missed opportunities there. And Shane Steichen told me before the season privately, he said, JT is going to catch a lot of passes this year. And I said, really? I said, because I forgot, or it seemed like you guys forgot that he existed in the passing game. And it's kind of what I said to him, paraphrasing. And he said, no, he says, Daniel is the perfect guy. He's going to get him the ball, and he's going to check it down to him a lot because that's what he does when he doesn't have his first option. And, we think that he can help us a little more in the passing game, even scheming stuff for him, as you saw I believe, last week against the Broncos. You saw that long reception that he had. That was a schemed play. It wasn't a check down. So I'm happy they're doing it because I think they've left a lot on the bone by not getting him involved there. He is a very poor pass protector. That's part of what has been has kept him out of the passing game, but he's doing a better job this year. I have to give him credit. And it really is about effort. So that's good. But at the same time, Alec Pierce being involved, I knew he could do it. They just had to actually give him the opportunities, and I'm glad that they are, because he is a more well-rounded receiver than we give him credit for.
I was talking about earlier, Stephen, before you came on, Alec Pierce and his ability to play, again, possession receiver is the wrong word, but, they're able to use him in shorter routes, bubble screens, whatever you want to use. He's not just the deep ball threat is what I'm getting at here, right? How much of that is Shane Steichen deciding to design and scheme things for Alec Pierce, and how much of that is Reggie Wayne, as I was talking about, saying, look, I had to reinvent myself as a receiver in the latter part of my career. You still have the versatility. Let me show you how to play in this style. Am I giving the Wayne aspect too much credit there?
Well, it definitely is a factor. Here's where it's a factor. Here's where Reggie Wayne is a factor. Alec Pierce has very much wanted to do this. I talked to him about this in the offseason, and he said his entire offseason work, or the majority of his offseason work, was spent on getting in and out of his breaks and doing the things that get you open on shorter and intermediate routes. When he gets to open up and run down the field on a 7-step drop, well, he can do that because the guy can run. I mean, he runs like a gazelle. He's 6'3" with long legs, and he's got good speed, right? So that's natural for him. What's not natural is how do you get open when you're running, an 8-yard in cut, and you've got to shake this corner who is all over you. You do that with very precise cuts and good technique and running routes that all look the same. So that corner doesn't get any kind of indication of what you're doing. So that is where I think the Reggie Wayne aspect comes into play, because he was great at that, right? Reggie Wayne was a technician. We talk about Jerry Rice. Now, he's not Jerry Rice, although he was an excellent player, a Hall of Famer, I think. But Jerry Rice, there's a reason he could play in the NFL running a 4.8 40, not quite 4.8, but almost, right? And the reason is because he was an incredible technician, and you never knew whether he was running a go route or a slant. You couldn't tell the difference, and that is what you have to be able to implement into your game. And Alec Pierce has done a much better job, I think, of running more precise routes, and that's how he's creating that space now. And then the other thing is Daniel Jones, frankly, is a factor here, because his ball placement has been incredible. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, I didn't think he was like this, wildly inaccurate quarterback, but I never thought he would throw the ball with this kind of accuracy. It is ridiculous. So, I mean, he's just doing a great job, and Alec Pierce is a great contested ball catcher, and it's all coming together. So it's all of the above.
Stephen, can you do me – you're not driving right now, are you?
I'm not.
Okay, good, because I want you to close your eyes for a second, okay?
Okay.
I'm not going to hypnotize you here, okay? Stephen Holder, I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, okay? I want you to envision Halloween of 2026. This is Halloween a year from now, a year and a month from now or so, okay? So you're getting ready, you're setting up the trick-or-treating and everything else, and just when the kids are about to come from the neighborhood up the drive, your wife says to you, "Oh, Stephen, before we hand out the candy, I was supposed to remind you, you've got a phone interview with the Colts quarterback tonight." You say, "That's right." So you tell the kids to hang on just a second. You've got to conduct an interview with the starting quarterback of the Colts. Is that player Daniel Jones?
It sure sounds like it, because the guy has no life. He doesn't know that it's Halloween, clearly, because all he does is study the damn playbook. So sounds like Daniel Jones to me. But look, in all seriousness,
But is he here a year from now as the guy that's starting for them?
I know. I know. I think that you
or is he
with
in
the avail-
fact this year for Halloween just disguised as a guy that's a competent quarterback, and we're all going to be fooled with a trick and not a treat?
Well, wouldn't we feel stupid if that's the case, right? But look, 3 games is not enough. I mean, I'm not giving him an extension tomorrow or anything. However, I think if what we're seeing is real, and even if it's not like to this level, he doesn't have to play this well all year for him to be a guy who is an option for them next year. This team, they can't be picky. Okay, they're not going to have a great draft pick. There's not going to be quarterbacks falling out of the trees. Like, if this guy continues to play competent football and can work with Shane Steichen in such a way that he can get the best out of him, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And so they have a couple things going for them. You still got to sign them, right? And it won't be $14 million, okay, like it is this year. So the options would be as follows: you negotiate, you come to a deal, you sign him to a multi-year contract. Obviously, he'd want that, because who wouldn't? The other alternative, if you can't get a deal done, is you have the franchise tag, because he is your player. So the Colts have the upper hand. He would certainly be of interest to other teams if he plays this well all year. There ain't no question about that. But they have the upper hand because they can negotiate with him in advance, whereas other teams cannot. And they also have the benefit of the franchise tag, which would be $1 gazillion for 1 year, but probably worth it.
I think what you Freudian just said to us before I inadvertently cut you off from saying it is that Daniel Jones, part of how he ended up getting the job is on Halloween he's studying the playbook, and the last guy was trick-or-treating, right?
Not exactly what I was saying, but I will say this. I hear where you're going with that. I do think that, I don't want to characterize these things in such a way like, well, one guy is working hard and the other guy isn't. But I would say this guy, but this guy definitely has an incomparable work ethic. That is true. And I think for Daniel Jones, he would not be the player that he is right now without that.
Right.
Okay. Now, there may be players for whom it's different. But for Daniel, his success from everything we see and hear is because when you ask Shane Steichen about him, it's the only thing he talks about. He says, well, the guy works hard and he studies. And it's all he puts in all this work, right? It's what everybody says. So he knows that his ticket to success is knowing everything backwards and forwards. And maybe it's because he doesn't have maybe the magical Josh Allen type of arm or the Lamar Jackson overall ability, right? He's not that kind of quarterback. There's no question about that. Now, he's throwing the ball very well, but there is something to be said for that. Like he has to be on the screws on all the details because, his arm talent maybe isn't what it is for some of the elite guys out there. So he makes up for it in other ways. And I know that's a tired cliche, like, maybe the guy who isn't as physically talented, he just outworks everybody. But I can only tell you, in the case of Daniel Jones, that's what you're seeing right now. Like, you're seeing a guy who's outworking everybody else and making himself the quarterback that he is, in part because of the work and the preparation that he puts in.
Stephen, let me give you a couple of notes from this weekend, and I want you to tell me what you notice here, okay? I think back, the NFL is a copycat and cyclical league, right? I mean, we know that there are trends that happen in the NFL. And a couple of years ago, we were all discussing, that the running back was this expendable, fungible position that, no longer did you need to spend a top second, 3 rounds pick on the running back because everybody was throwing for 1 billion yards. And the league and the competition committee, going back to Brady Manning, was set up to advantage quarterback. I look at and I'm looking at a sheet right here, okay? This past weekend, Tyrod Taylor in his game. Tyrod Taylor threw for, let me see here, 26 of 36 for 197 yards, okay? Carson Wentz comes in and fills in. And Carson Wentz goes 14 of 20 for 173 yards. These are both wins. Bryce Young for Carolina, 16 of 24 for 121 yards. What is it that we're seeing? And this is becoming more and more the norm. Why is it that we are now seeing short yardage passing games where you're getting guys that are completing 20 to 25 passes but doing it for a total of 125 yards?
Well, I think there have to be some extenuating circumstances for that to work. So you mentioned Carson Wentz, for example. I believe they had 2 defensive touchdowns in that game. So that's an example of a scenario. Wait, did you mention Wentz? No, you mentioned.
I did mention Wentz, yeah. I mean, Joe Flacco,
okay,
21 of 36, 142 yards,
right.
If we're staying on the former Colt theme. But you get what I'm saying. Like, you know,
right.
it's almost like rhythm passing is now prioritized over deep ball passing.
I think it depends on the kind of game, right? I mean, we also saw a game last night where there were, 80 some odd points scored or something. I don't know, or definitely 70 points, right? I forget off the top of my head. But the point is, I think it depends. It depends on the kind of game you're talking about. And certain games will play out differently. And I think coaches and play callers will govern themselves accordingly. The Browns and Flacco, a 13-10 game. I think that's one where if the Packers aren't moving the ball and you're the Browns and your defense is doing a hell of a job, like you have to assume it was, I didn't see the game, well, you're going to probably call a conservative game. And I mean, I think that's kind of a decision that probably is made in the moment, right? The Vikings, the defense playing great, 2 defensive scores. The Bengals not moving the ball, on the other hand, right? So you govern yourself differently. Even the Colts, for some, to some extent, now they scored plenty of points, but when did Jonathan Taylor really take over that game? In the second half, when they had a big lead, right?
Right.
So I would say it is game to game, but what your point proves, though, is that you do have to be able to win different ways. And I also think that the running game matters here too. There's some fantastic running backs in the league right now, and that they're a factor here too. The running game is not dead. I'm happy to say, because I think that we did overlook that, and there was that whole period of like, oh, don't pay your running back because it won't be worth it. Well, I mean, you think the Colts regret paying Jonathan Taylor right now? I don't think we talk about that enough, right? I mean, just 2 years ago, they were at war with each other. Jonathan Taylor and the Colts were at war. He and his agent were telling me privately, yeah, we're done.
He wanted to trade, right?
I mean, I can be honest about it now. I mean, where do people think my sources were? He was the freaking source, right? So, like, my point is this. That has paid off, I mean, wonderfully, all right? No one was complaining about that when he was taking that 46-yard run to the house on Sunday. So I'm all over the place here, but I do think there's lots of little factors. And good coaching and teams that are built the right way can win without maybe the big 300-yard passing game. It's harder to do, but it can be done. That's true.
Okay, lastly, Stephen Holder, our guest. Through 3 weeks, usually like right about the time, statistically, certainly speaking, where you do start to get a better idea as to who's legit and who's not, okay?
Yep.
When you look right now at the NFL through game 3 or week 3, give me 2 teams, let's say one to the good and one to the bad, whose record is a little misleading as to who they are, because either they've gotten off to a good record and you're like, yeah, but you got to look below the surface, that's maybe a little misleading, or one that has gotten off to a slow start, but you have to look at who they played or circumstances and say, don't sleep on them just yet.
So this will not be a popular answer, but I'm going to say it. I think the Colts have to prove some things. They're 3-0, and they have earned it. Now, the fact is, the Titans and Dolphins, I mean, they're combined 0-6, okay? They haven't done anything. They've barely moved the ball this year. So I think we need to find out. That's why this Week 4 game is so important.
Right.
That is not to suggest I don't believe in them. I'm not saying that. Here's a reason to believe in the Colts, because they played 2 bad teams, yes, in the Dolphins and Titans, but they pounded them. I mean, they did whatever they wanted. That is not the Colts team we are familiar with. We are familiar with a Colts team that even just last year, when they were competing for the playoffs, was just skating by the Jets and Patriots, right? So this is a different season for sure. So, but let's see. This is why this will be their biggest test on the road. Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. Let's find out what they're made of. On the other end, I guess a team that maybe is whose bad record is deceiving. You think? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah. I want to say the Houston Texans, but I don't know if I believe it. I think they might be bad.
I agree. I agree with the fact they might be bad.
One side of my brain is like, well, duh, they're not as bad as an 0-3 team.
Is Kansas City really 1-2? You know what I mean? Like, I know they are, but you get what I'm saying?
Now, they're not they don't scare you right now. There's no question about that. Although I would say this, Mahomes is the greatest winner I've seen outside of Tom Brady. He just knows how to win. They know how to win. So, look, we thought they were down late last year, and then what they do? They went to the freaking Super Bowl, right? Late last season, we were just waiting for somebody to figure it out and beat them in the playoffs, and all they did was just win. So I never bury those guys, and I think it's going to be one of the great storylines of the rest of this season is, do the Chiefs figure it out? Because either way, whether they're dead, they're not dead, but whether they fall off or whether they make a run, it's a great story either way because we're going to be paying attention. So I am fascinated by it without question.
Can you imagine being a sports talk radio guy in New Orleans? You're talking about the 0-3 Saints. You're wanting to deviate from it, so it's Pelicans chat time. I mean, how miserable must that be, right? I guess it's all LSU all the time, right?
And then you got to deal with Brian Kelly. There's that too.
I know.
Sorry.
Brian Kelly, by the way.
I mean, he seems lovely, doesn't he? He seems lovely.
He has the most punchable face in college football. I don't know if I should say that, but I'm saying it. Right?
I mean, the guy just bugs me, man. I don't know what it is. That guy bothers me. I see him come on the screen. I want to change the channel. I'm sorry.
Brian Kelly, of course, has a famous tirade just a couple weeks ago in a college football press conference, and a guy that has perhaps one of the most famous just found out that he's in the unemployment line. I will tell you who that is just a couple minutes from now. But Stephen Holder, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Stephen Holder joining us. Just came out while we were talking to Stephen. There's a guy in college football that's one of the bigger names, and for the last decade or so has been at one of the bigger programs, and just found out that he now is looking for work. We'll let you know who it is next. So one of the more famous, and I can't believe, at least based on the math and based on his age, that it's been 18 years since this famous rant that took place. And when you think about great mullets, there have been some great mullets in sports. To an extent, Andre Agassi had a great mullet. Back in, obviously, like the Nasty Boys, I think Rob Dibble had a pretty good mullet, if I'm not mistaken. Brian Bosworth had an awesome mullet. Mike Gundy of Oklahoma State, who I believe, I'm 90% certain in this, that he had played college football at Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State, listen, I get it. I mean, we're in Indiana. What the hell does anybody care about Oklahoma State? I get it. But Oklahoma State is one of those programs that, has always been a decent college football program. Obviously, Barry Sanders, out of Oklahoma State. They've had good teams. And Mike Gundy, when he went off on this rant, at that time was today? Fairly new.
Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm not a kid. So get your facts straight.
That's right. Get them straight. 58-year-old Mike Gundy today found out in his 21st season at Oklahoma State that it will be his last. He has been terminated effective immediately. He had said just yesterday, I'm under contract here for, I think, 3.5 years. When I was hired here to take this job, ever since that day, I put my heart and soul into this, and I will continue to do that until at some point, if I say I don't want to do it or somebody else says we don't want you to do it. Oklahoma State has said that. He is owed $15 million. He has a record of 170-90 from 2005 to today. 8 10-win seasons, 8 of them. The 2011 Big 12 title, and finished number 3 in the top 25 and in the Fiesta Bowl that year. Now, that is a school, Oklahoma State, with endless pockets. And I know that sounds crazy, and that's probably part of the reason why Mike Gundy has been let go, is because T. Boone Pickens was a huge, huge contributor financially and booster for Oklahoma State. He basically built kind of that program, built their stadium. I think he gave them, I mean, literally multi-hundreds of millions of dollars athletically or to the university itself. And the reason I mention all that, this will start, and I don't know, I'm sure it says here who their interim will be. I'm going to assume that their interim coach will be some, whoever the associate head coach is or somebody that's right now. But in terms of, by the way, yesterday was the 17th anniversary of the famous I'm a man, I'm 40 rant. So I guess he was actually 41 when he said it. But this will begin the coaching carousel. And the only reason I mention that in terms of the coaching carousel and on a sports talk radio show in Indianapolis, as Indiana continues to impress and as Indiana continues to win games, Curt Cignetti's national profile will only increase. I don't believe for a second that Curt Cignetti has, and I want people that are listening right now, that are hearing my voice, to understand what I'm saying here. I don't believe for a second that Curt Cignetti has any interest, desire, or is looking in any way, shape, or form to leave Indiana. I think he is as happy as a pig in slop in Bloomington, Indiana. He was at JMU. He built a great program at James Madison. Obviously, he's been to other places as well, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and, and other schools before JMU. But when he came to Bloomington, he made it known, essentially. I love the town. I love the school. I love the program. I love the fans. I have no interest in leaving. And that's probably true. Matter of fact, I think it is true. And I'm not saying Oklahoma State is a school that goes after Curt Cignetti. But Florida's going to be looking for a coach. I don't think Clemson's going to be looking for a coach, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, they are. I don't think that's going to be the case, and I don't think Alabama's going to. But when you start getting into those big-time football is life, SEC or ACC, Southeast part of the country, boosters galore, you start getting into schools that are willing to pay big-time money, and in addition to that, they want to win now. And they will look around at guys and say, who has proven they can win now? And Cignetti's name is going to come up on lists. It absolutely is. And I know that he has said, and I believe, and all of that he has no interest in going. My only thing is, everything changes all of a sudden when you start talking about some of the money that's being thrown around. And, what's really interesting is, if you look at some schools, they have super wealthy alumni and boosters. Well, alumni, but not necessarily boosters. In other words, at a Stanford, I'm going off assumption here, so that maybe that's dangerous. But I think there are a lot of schools where a degree from that university or going to that school puts you in a position, financially speaking, just within the business world where you're going to make a lot of money. But a lot of those schools, the people that go on to make a lot of money, they think of their school in the academic sense, but not necessarily in the I need to support this financially to get us the best coach sense. Whereas at an Indiana, and I'm just throwing out big state universities here, a Mississippi State, a Florida, South Carolina, you can get people that live in those areas that didn't even attend the school, but have a huge pride in the fact that it's a state university and where they live, and they think of it almost as like the professional team of their respective area where they're living, and therefore they're going to give it a bunch of money. And then all of a sudden a Florida or a school like that comes, and they're like, hey, we understand that Curt Cignetti has mentioned that he does not want to leave Indiana, but we're going to make him an offer of $12.5 million a year or whatever. I mean, I think Dabo Swinney's making 9.5, 10. Saban was making 10. I would bet you, well, like it says right here, I mean, if Gundy's owed 15.5 or $15 million over 3 years, so he was getting and that's probably the minimum base of 5. That doesn't include coaches show and camps and whatever else and shoe contracts and all that, right? So, I mean, there is big, big, big time money out there, but it all has to start with one of the big time deep pocket, throw money at it programs to be looking for a coach to start jumpstarting and setting the market value for big time coaches. And Oklahoma State is probably one of them.
Jake, I know Curt Cignetti's also a man, but he's not 40, he's 64, and he's highlighted that this is probably his final spot.
Totally get it.
Because he's not interested in going somewhere else and doing another build-up. Like, to me, it becomes fascinating if Clemson or Alabama came a-calling. Because those are two programs
right?
You don't have to build up.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, I think the only way right now, $8 million for Cignetti, right?
Especially for Alabama because of his time there. I know he was there with Saban, but still.
Yeah. I mean, he's making, let's say, with everything all together, he's making 9 at Indiana. If Oklahoma State sets the bar now somewhere where they really overpay for somebody or they go out, then all of a sudden an Alabama or a Florida is looking, they may say, look, we got to pony up $15 million for a coach. And I do think that he is going to be on people's radar. I don't personally think he's going to leave. I think, and I have no reason to believe, there's been no insinuation, none of that. I mean, it's not irresponsible of me to throw it out there. I'm just simply saying his name absolutely with certainty is going to come up, and the number is only going to increase probably because this is an intriguing domino to fall, an intriguing one to fall. In terms of intrigue for the Colts, we will get you caught up on the intrigue of what may or may not be news on their injury report, and we'll do it next. So the Colts have announced their unofficial depth chart for their game against the Rams. When you want to talk about unofficial, I would say, considering that the game's that far away, but they do it each and every week. The real case that it's unofficial, the proof in the pudding, would be the fact that they have right now as their starting nickel Kenny Moore on their depth chart, and at wide receiver Alec Pierce. It does note Pierce left game number 3 with a concussion and is currently in concussion protocol. It does note Kenny Moore recorded his 4th career pick 6 against the Titans, later exited the game with a calf injury. There has been no update on the availability of either, but as Stephen Holder mentioned to us, Kenny Moore, one would assume the safe bet would be that he will miss the game against the Rams. Now, speaking of betting, that's something you could do if you were in Vegas. That's exactly where the Fever are. They are not there to gamble, obviously, but there to play in game number 2 against the Aces tonight. 9:30 tip. You can hear that right here on this radio station, meaning that Eddie Garrison will be in the pregame show at 9:15, correct?
Yeah, I'll be on until hopefully midnight.
Eddie, oftentimes we see teams go in and kind of steal a game 1.
Yeah.
And then, I'm trying to think of, it just seems and feels like a lot of times that's kind of a wake-up call if there is a pretty clear gap in terms of a roster versus the favorite, if you will. And I think most people thought the Aces, were a huge favorite in this particular series. And so usually when there's that kind of a disparity, a team that loses game 1 turns around and quickly responds. I'm curious to see what will happen. I just think this Fever team and the way that they're playing, the Kelsey Mitchell has just been, she has really elevated her game over the last,
she's been
2 months.
So good.
She's the most valuable player in the league. I know she's not named the MVP, but she is playing as the most valuable player in the league. She has set a single season scoring mark for,
points per game, points average
in
the season, yeah,
for the Fever, and I just think she's been huge. Now, I did see yesterday, and I do think that, and I'm hoping that we will have Coach Stephanie White on this week. And one of the things that we can ask her, I don't believe this will come to fruition, but I wanted to ask you about it, Eddie.
Okay.
I saw yesterday several people mentioning that that they believe, and I could be totally off base on this. I might have fallen victim to, it was one of those things I quickly saw like in passerby, that there is still the possibility based on the language of the way that it was done or the timing or whatever else, that Caitlin Clark could have eligibility in the postseason. Now, did I totally misread that? I don't think that would be the – I cannot foresee a possibility of her getting on the floor, but that it is not entirely out of the realm of possibility if there was some situation where she was needed.
That the phrasing word for word was Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark will miss the remainder of the 2025 WNBA season.
Yeah, that again, I have no reason to believe that they have any thought of her playing on the floor.
And listen, I understand that she's a great player, but why would you?
I totally agree.
Why would you mess with what's working right now?
So that's the other question. I understand she's a great player. I understand that over the course of a season when you have her available, that's exactly and obviously what you are going to do. But are they right now playing better as a team than they have at any point when she has been on the floor? And that's not a knock on her. She was not healthy and has not been around for the better part of it. But it does feel, does it not, that right now the sum is better than the individual parts that they have had in the past, and that their cohesiveness right now is really strong. And I think part of it is because of the fact that there is no doubt of where they're going offensively through Kelsey Mitchell, and that's been a difference for them, Eddie.
I mean, that's an easy yes, Jake, just because of the fact that, and I mean, she has not played, Caitlin Clark, she did not play 5 consecutive games at any point this year. You have to remember, dating back to even when camp was starting, she was dealing with a quad injury, so it sidelined her for a couple of days, if not a week. And then she starts the season, plays the first 4 games. Then she's sidelined for 2 weeks with that was the quad strained. And then she comes back against New York, plays 3 games against Golden State. Actually, she plays another series of 4 games. And then she re-aggravates. She has another injury, but the groin issue, and now it's the other groin. So, like, it's hard to really say that she even had a chance to really have, the togetherness and the connective, level of play that the Fever have right now when she was on the floor, just because she just wasn't on the floor for an extended period of time to really give you an answer on how the season would look if she was out there for the majority of the year.
I actually think, they are 6 wins away.
Yes.
I think they could. I honestly think they could win it. I think they may win this series against Las Vegas. I do. I think they're going to beat the Aces.
I could see it, especially now that they have home court advantage.
My cousin works for the Aces.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But she just had a baby. I don't know if she's like on leave or what. But I'd like to. Maybe we could get her for some insight.
Also, it feels, Jake, like right now they're in their quote unquote mid-season form. Like the Aces already peak. Like they had that 17-game win streak. Now they've lost 2 of their last 3 games. Like, are they coming back down a little bit? Did they already peak? I know Asia Wilson in that group is very, very good, but when you win 17 consecutive games, you don't really have to overcome a lot of adversity. So how are they going to respond, I think, is a big question.
When we come back, Scott Agness is going to join us 35 from now. We will get into this. But I am curious, by the way, the question that I asked to Stephen Holder, I would like to know from you folks, the team in the NFL right now, like, are you convinced the Colts are for real, number one? But what other team are you the most unsure about? Who is the most intriguing, either because you're not convinced they're as good as their record says, or you think they're probably better than their record says? And we have tickets to give away, do we not, Eddie?
We do, for MGK.
Okay, so we will do all of that on the other side. 239-1070. That's 239-1070. And as the kids would say in the street lingo, 239-1070. 2 things that we want to get to here when you call in. Number 1, I'd like to know which team you find to be the most intriguing right now. And number 2, Eddie will come up with a way that we are giving away those tickets, and we'll get you all the information on that MGK concert. That he used to be Machine Gun Kelly, now he's just MGK, right?
Yes.
Do they still have MGD?
What?
MGD? I used to love MGD in the bottle.
Not familiar with what
a weird
that is.
fun fact about me is when I go somewhere to have a beer, I have to have it on draft. But the only one that I'll drink out of the bottle used to be MGD.
By the way, Thomas Bryant just signed a 1-year deal with the Cavaliers.
Okay. Good for the former Pacer and former Hoosier, right? 239-1070. We'll talk next. Okay, Scott Agness coming up bottom of the hour. We'll get into the Fever matchup tonight. Also, as Eddie had just mentioned, Thomas Bryant, now a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I thought Bryant played really well for the Pacers last year, but there were times, and you know, maybe I'm the only one that thought this. I don't think it was the most popular opinion necessarily because I liked him. And he came on this program a couple times and was always enjoyable. We had him on. But Thomas Bryant, I thought, Eddie, there were times where his emotion, it was a good thing most of the time, but there were also times where I thought he got a little too emotional on the floor and kind of, not that he was a detriment per se. But
he let his emotions get the better of him?
Yeah. I mean, and not even like in a getting a technical foul kind of way, but just in a lack of focus kind of way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So we have tickets to give away, by the way, for MGK. This is going to be Saturday. That's this Saturday, is it not? No, wait a minute. Is that right?
June 20th? Next year?
It's for next year?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that gives you plenty of time to plan.
Yeah, it does.
June 20th at Ruoff Music Center. He was just here, I believe, was he not?
He might have been here when the State Fair was here because of his album debuting, and he was doing like an album signing at a couple different vinyl shops or something like that.
Now, let me ask you this. Did he have an album? This is going to basically exhaust my level of knowledge of MGK. Did he have an album? Eddie, can you look up for me his albums and tell me if, and I'm going to guess the year also. I'm going to say sometime around 2018 or 2019, he had an album called Hotel Diablo. Am I correct in that? Am I way off base?
Let me look. I actually don't know much about.
I'm going to be very impressed by myself.
He had a song called El Diablo.
El Diablo. Okay, did he have?
Oh, yes. The album was named. It was his fourth album that he ever released.
And what year was that album?
2019.
Do we have an applause button that we can play? Thank you. I know that only because he came into the radio station, and there were a bunch of fans that showed up, and they baked him the most unbelievably impressive cake I've ever seen in the shape of a hotel.
I've got something better. We don't have applause, but we do have this. You got
it! Thank you.
You're welcome.
The National Sports Festival, baby. They made him this cake. These fans literally just knew he was at the radio station, like on the air, and they showed up in the parking lot with this cake that they'd made for him. And it was the most beautiful, unbelievable, multi-tiered, looked like a hotel in a cake. And I felt so bad because they wanted so badly for him to eat it, or for all of us to, like, you know, cut it up and eat it. And of course, that's when you have people that you've never met before. They're like, here, I made you something to eat. There was a little bit of a hesitation there, right? But we will give away tickets here coming up in just a bit for it. But I would like to know this. If you look over the NFL right now and you look at the standings in the National Football League, you know, it's kind of like we were talking about in college football. In college football right now, you look at the top 10 and you're like, okay, I mean, you know, Texas is 3-1 now after their loss to Ohio State, but they literally have beaten like Sam Houston State, Warren Central, and Ivy Tech. Okay? You have no idea how good a 3-1 they are. In the NFL, when you look over the teams right now, we talked about it, of the teams that are unbeaten, Eddie, and this is what I want to know from people. Okay? Of the unbeatens, the Colts, the Bills, the Chargers, okay? The Niners, the Bucks, and who's the last one I'm missing here?
Eagles.
And the Eagles. Of those teams, which one feels like, and I guess, you know, here we're going to say the Colts, you kind of have to take them out of it because we've watched the Colts for every quarter. But the one that is the most, I think, enigmatic at 3-0, or the one where you're just kind of the least hesitant to immediately crown them as you're being overly convinced, would be, in my opinion, probably Tampa Bay. I mean, they just got a win where they needed a field goal to defeat the Jets. Yeah, I mean, how good are the Jets, right? How bad are the Jets? Although the Jets, I think, could move the football. But the 3-0 teams that I think the Chargers are really good, and then I think Buffalo's obviously really good. And Philly, it goes without saying. But if you had to go with the 3-0 team of which you are the most skeptical, Eddie, you would go with which?
I would probably still go with the Colts, or I would go with the Buccaneers.
Okay, so you would go with Tampa also.
Yeah.
Let's see what Chris thinks at 239-1070. What's up, Chris?
Hold on, hold on. How you guys doing?
All right, Chris, have you called the show before?
No, I have not.
You sound like a fun guy, Chris. Do you mind if we play a little get to know your listener? I've had a lot of success with this. Kids love this segment that we do. Would you be willing to participate?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Chris, if you don't mind me asking, how old a fella are you?
Almost 60.
Now, that wasn't a trick question, Chris, just so you know. Okay. Almost 60, you said, right? So
Yep.
I'm going to guess, Chris, that puts your high school class somewhere around 82 or 83. Am I right?
84?
84? Okay, and that was from what high school?
But would have been Hayworth and Kokomo.
Now, Kokomo Hayworth High School, you said?
Yes, sir. I was the last class out of there. Next year it became Kokomo High School.
I was going to say, did that consolidate into Kokomo, or then there was also Kokomo Western, correct?
Well,
Northwestern.
Yeah, Northwesterns where actually my wife graduated, so there you go.
Okay, there you go. And, Chris, if you don't mind me asking, what line of work are you in now?
Manufacturing.
Oh, what do you manufacture?
Mostly metals, sheet metal type stuff.
I thought for a second you were going to say meth, and then I was going to be concerned. You know?
Well, if it's profitable, we might try that.
Okay, well, depending what part of Indiana you are, Chris, it might be. Okay, Chris, so you heard my question here in terms of the NFL. How big a Colts fan are you, or who is your team?
Well, over the past 5 or so years, the Colts been kind of tough to like, but here lately, I'm kind of going to jump on the bandwagon again, I think.
Okay, do you believe – I did see an interesting article, by the way, Chris, that said so far this year the Colts have lost nearly $1.5 million in lack of ticket sales through the home games that they've had in terms of open seats that have been up there. Do you think that's because people are slow to get on board? Do you think people are now sold on it? Where do you stand here in terms of – you said you might get back on the bandwagon. Where do you stand on it? How much more do we need to do to convince you?
Well, of course, win more games, I would do it. But I think part of it is, like, nobody likes uncertainty. When they start out the season with they don't even know who the heck the quarterback's going to be and don't even announce that until, a few weeks before the season starts. That's kind of tough,
All right, fair. Chris, by the way, is this you said it's the first time you've listened to this program. Have you listened, or that you've called in the program, have you listened to it for a while?
On and off over the years.
More off than on, right?
Yeah, just mostly when I'm in the car and I have time.
All right, well, that makes two of us. All right, Chris, I appreciate the call. Last question then, by the way, I want to know this. Of the 3-0, so the Colts are 3-0, Buffalo, Tampa, the Chargers, Philadelphia, San Francisco, the others, which one are you, aside from the Colts, which one are you still the most, you need more time to know how good they are?
Oh, boy. Probably Tampa.
Yeah, I think that's, Chris, I appreciate it. That's the overwhelming sentiment for certain would be Tampa. Now, did Chris want the tickets?
Yep. He went through Get to Know Your Listener, so yeah, he's good.
So Chris has won the tickets?
Yeah, the one pair. We have another one to give away. We're gonna do the other color.
We have between now and June to give them away. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, that surprised me when I saw that we're giving the tickets away. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, it's in June.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably should. The way this show's going, you might as well call in now and and secure your spot, right?
Yes.
I want to get into that, what I just talked about, by the way, with the Colts. The article I saw yesterday that was sent to me, and I was surprised by this because do you remember a couple of years ago, Eddie, the word was that there was a season ticket. For years, I always heard about the season ticket waiting list. Now, I have been very, very skeptical of this because, and several people have pointed out to me to tell me that in fact, I was wrong on this. And I'm going back a couple of years ago. But a couple of years ago when it was, I can't remember the timing or the situation, but there was a nonstop discussion about the Colts and a waiting list for season tickets. And I remember at that time saying, who is on the waiting list? I know Green Bay has a waiting list for season tickets. I never met anybody. I know a lot of people with Colts season tickets. I never met anybody that was like, yeah, I'm on a waiting list for season tickets. It just seemed like they were kind of always available if you wanted them. But that was several years ago. But this article that was sent to me yesterday is talking about NFL teams and how much they are estimated to have lost so far this season. Okay? The Tennessee Titans are predicted to have lost $1.9 million per game from empty seats at Nissan Stadium. With an average home attendance of 57,715 across the 25 seasons so far, that means there are around 11,400 empty seats per game. Okay? So that would come out to, I don't know how many home games they've had, I would assume to that number, 1.9. With an average ticket price of $167, those empty seats could have cost the Titans, and then it has a figure, $3,816,952 over their, yes, in fact, 2 home games so far. Now, the teams with the fewest empty seats so far in their home games, the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Washington Commanders. Washington, a little surprising, because even though they have a loyal fan base, obviously they've got more competition. Baltimore's in the same area. A lot of people that live in the D.C. area are not native to Washington, etc. Dallas, it kind of makes sense because people want to go just to go to Jerry's World. And Philly, diehard fans, and in addition to that, really good team. Okay, now, this is surprising to me. The team with the second highest loss is the Green Bay Packers, with an estimated $1,745,986 lost per game. I have a hard time believing that. But it says Lambeau Field has a seating capacity of 81,441. Yet the team is attracting 77,264 home fans this season. Now, that's assuming that the seats that are empty were not sold. In Lambeau, I don't think that's the case, unless there are some seats that are not available for season ticket. Other franchises that are estimated to be losing: Minnesota, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, the Bears, and the Cardinals. It says the Indianapolis Colts are next, with 3,013 seats left vacant after 63,987 home fans filled the 67,000 available seats at Lucas Oil Stadium. The estimated ticket costs for the empty seats, $190 apiece. This, again, seems, I think, a little bit off base. But I do think there were, especially in that Denver game, there were a lot of empty seats, admittedly. Now, I will give benefit of the doubt here to the fans of Indianapolis, and I'll tell you why. I grew up here. I love Indy. I've been to the games. I went to the Denver game. I was not at the season opener against Miami because I got back a little bit late. But I was there in Denver for the Denver game, and the preseason games I was there as well. But one of the factors that I think you have to take into consideration, Eddie, and I give the people of Indianapolis and the Colts both a benefit of the doubt here. I don't think it's a knock on the Colts. I don't think. Now, what Chris was saying is probably correct in the fact that there were people that were hesitant or skeptical going into the year just because of the quarterbacking situation, the uncertainty thereof. But then why, Jake, why they're 3-0 or they were 2-0 going into, well, I guess actually they were just 1-0 when they're going into the Denver game. Now the next time that they're back home when they are playing on the 5th of August or the 5th of October against the Raiders, I would assume it's going to be absolutely packed to the gills, especially if they beat the Rams. But I do understand this factor, and I think that people that don't live in Indianapolis or don't live in Minneapolis or don't live in Detroit, I think they lose sight of this. We live in climates where it gets cold and it gets ugly and it gets nasty. And once it gets that way, there's no turning back for several months. I totally understand. Even if you are a season ticket holder for the Colts, I totally understand how there are people that would say to themselves, look, I even have season tickets. But in late September and early October, when I look out on a Sunday and it is 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, absolutely gorgeous, and the roof is closed, I understand why the Colts closed the roof, even though I get into my whole soapbox about the unnecessary expense of a retractable roof stadium. But when the weather is like that outside, I totally understand why people are saying to themselves, we may not get another one of these days. I'm going to enjoy it while I can. I'm going to go and walk the Monon, or I'm going to go and work in the yard and listen to the game or watch the game on television and come in and out and with the windows open and enjoy the weather before it turns all of a sudden into living in a Baltic region for 4 months.
It was also a 4:25 kick, so like you're probably going to get you home till 8:30.
True. If you're from southern Indiana, I mean, let's say you're from, you usually drive in from, I mean, look at Mo from Ohio. Mm-hmm. Drives 2.5 hours, right? I mean, that has to be a factor as well on the later starts for sure. But I just think that we are getting into that time of year where you just don't know when you get that last hurrah, that last push of beautiful weather. I think there are people that are like, I don't know, man, by the time I get up, think about this. Let's say it's a 1 o'clock kick, Eddie, okay? Mm-hmm. And let's say you live in, we'll just say Zionsville. So you get down, most people, if there's a 1 o'clock kick, want to get in the vicinity of downtown around what time?
Probably noon, right?
What if you tailgate?
You're looking at 11 a.m.
So let's say,
that's probably the latest, 10:30.
Okay, so let's say, we'll say 11. And at that case, you're leaving the house around what? Maybe 10:15. By the time you park, everything else?
You're living in Zionsville, probably at 10 o'clock.
10?
Yeah.
Okay. Game starts at 1 o'clock. What time's the game end?
4.
That's a fast game, right?
3 hours, yeah, about the time.
So then by the time you get back to your car, you get in the car, you drive back. So you're getting home around what, 4:45, 5 o'clock?
5:30 probably.
Okay. So now you're looking at a 7.5-hour day, right? And so I do get, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's all fun. It's awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not poo-pooing any of it. But I do understand, especially if you have season tickets and there are, say, 8 of them a year, why there might be 1 or 2 of them where obviously in that case, in a best case scenario, you're giving the tickets to somebody that wants to go. But I totally understand or respect why there may be some people that are like, you know what, we tried to give the tickets away and we couldn't find anybody to go, whatever, but it was just a gorgeous day. We wanted to go to the pumpkin, whatever, right? Simon says, Simon, do you have season tickets?
Yes, sir, I do. Since 96.
Okay.
Go ahead. I've had the same 2 tickets since 96.
Okay. So you heard what I was talking about, your thoughts, or what compelled you to call in about it?
So I have tried to add 2 tickets to my account. So I have a son that's just now super interested. He's driving. He can go to the game, wants to take a buddy. So I want to add 2 tickets. There are tickets around my section because, every year you get the opportunity to upgrade. There are tickets that I can change to around my section, and I really don't want to leave the section I'm in. But but they're like, oh well, there are no season tickets left. But I know there's seats available.
Right.
So my take is, in the section I'm in the lower level, and they're pretty sought after. Like I feel like, and I've heard the word dynamic pricing or dynamic ticket pricing. I've heard that term used a lot, where the Colts themselves actually compete in the secondary market with tickets and they sell them for more money than what they're actually the face value or what a season ticket holder can sell them for. Now, I've just heard this on the internet, right? And we all know everything on the internet's true.
That's right.
There's something to that, I believe, because I have the ability to change seats in that section, even though there's a waiting list. It's just, it doesn't make sense. And it seems very Colt-like and being very untransparent with anything that's going on. I don't know. Now, I will say this. As a season ticket holder since '96, even when they're horrible, my son and I love going to the games, and we would walk out of there obviously ticked off more times than not. But still, we love the in-game entertainment, even if it is Bachman turning overdrive playing every touchdown. Right?
Do you remember that, by the way?
Absolutely. I mean, but at the end of the day, it makes no sense.
Okay, Simon, let me ask you a couple of questions here. Okay.
Okay.
And yep. I certainly understand if you don't want to answer this first part. It's not meant to. I mean, it's going to sound like a rude question. You feel free to decline. Okay. You have 2 seats that are in the lower level. Do you mind me asking roughly what that costs you for a year as a season ticket holder?
Well, I will tell you, Jake, that I am in the. I don't mind. My tickets, I believe, are the absolute best value in the stadium. I am row 12, dead center end zone, and I pay $128 per ticket. So $1,280 per year per ticket.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're looking at $2,600 basically for the year, right?
Yep,
for 2
that's
seats.
correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
You live on what side of town, or you live where?
West side.
Okay, so for a 1:00 kick, do you tailgate and that kind of thing, or you pretty much park in, got your same parking spot, go in, go to the game, head home?
We have a cadence. We do the same thing every week. We go to a restaurant prior to the game. We do drive in, pay $50 to park, go spend another $75 at lunch or for lunch, whatever, dinner, whatever, snacks before the game.
Okay.
And listen, not complaining at all. I mean, it's a fabulous way to spend 10 Sundays a year with my 16-year-old son.
No, very cool. And are there ever, I guess the last question I would have is this. Are there ever games where you just say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out, or the weather is perfect outside or whatever else? In other words, when you look at that number of empty seats that are there, I'm just trying to find the plausible explanation as to why some people may be foregoing a game.
Man, I will say this. I typically go every time unless we have a conflict, right? Now that my son is driving, the Denver game, I just said, hey, look, I'm going to stay home with your mom, and I'm going to watch TV and spend the day with her. You can take a friend. But they went, right? So, right. But therein lies why I want to add, because I still want to go. I still want to go to the game, but I just can't. But I also understand that he wants to take buddies or friends or whatever, right? So, yeah. So not unless we have a conflict. It's an appointment. Those are 10. Listen, we have 11 days that my wife pretty much knows are off limits.
Okay, here's my other thing, right? Simon, real quick. If there is a game that you cannot, this one I'm fascinated by. If there's a game that you cannot attend, or for whatever reason, your son's graduating high school, whatever, okay? If you want to resell your tickets, do you just surrender them back to the Colts and they put them on the secondary market? Do you personally put them on StubHub? How does that work?
I think I have enough. I usually just sell them for face value to an acquaintance.
Okay,
a friend.
but okay, bad example. Sorry. What I'm getting at is this. It is my contention, Simon, that the one area where NFL franchises, and I'm not singling out or picking on the Colts, but we are now seeing so many visiting fans in stadiums, and people get upset about that. But it's my belief that the teams themselves have a business alliance with secondary markets that that allow for the season ticket holder totally anonymously to click one button that gets sold to somebody totally anonymously, and you have no idea whether that's a Raiders fan, Broncos fan, Patriots fan, whatever, because that's just the nature of doing the business, right?
Well, and listen, I did that. I will say that I did that one time. You remember the infamous Chuck Pagano dumbest football play against the Patriots?
Yeah, it was the best play in football history. Yes, but
yes.
But my point being,
ticket.
did the Colts facilitate for you to sell on the secondary market?
Yes, they did.
Okay,
and I paid for my entire season ticket.
Totally understand.
Season ticket,
Simon,
those two.
I totally get it. I appreciate the call. I totally get it. And that's my point, though, simply is this, and I appreciate it, Simon. I totally get why franchises, and I'm not picking on the Colts, I get why every franchise gets frustrated with visiting fans in their building, but I also believe that frustration is muted and they lose their leg to stand on in that when they have a website linked connection to a secondary market that allows you to sell your ticket anonymously, and who knows who it is that's buying it, right? I mean, that's the nature of all of it from both sides. Scott Agness joins us, Fever Profile and Preview, next. items before we get to Scott Agness here. First off, Mike Gundy, longtime Oklahoma State head football coach, today relieved of his duties with the Cowboys at the age of 58. He has 8 10-win seasons at Oklahoma State, but they've gotten off to a rough start. So Mike Gundy has been fired at Oklahoma State. Also, from a Colts standpoint, Alec Pierce, Kenny Moore, no update on their status for the Colts game coming up on Sunday in Los Angeles. Thomas Bryant, the former IU and Pacer star, now a Cleveland Cavalier, signing a 1-year deal. And sad news in the NFL, former running back Rudy Johnson of the Cincinnati Bengals, the franchise announced passing away today at the age of 45. It is believed to have been self-inflicted. He had battled apparently with mental illness and possibly CTE issues of late. But Rudy Johnson, Reggie Wayne among those, sending out their condolences on social media for the passing of a guy that had a really good year in year 3 and 4 during his time as a running back out of Auburn with the Cincinnati Bengals.
And the NFL, Jake, Jackson Dart will be starting moving forward, at least for the time being, for the New York Giants. Russell Wilson to the bench, and had some New York Liberty news earlier today as well. They will not be retaining their head coach, Sandy Brondello, after the season that ended against the Phoenix Mercury in the opening round of the playoffs.
Joining us now on the guest line, he is, I believe, out in Las Vegas from Fieldhouse Files. Scott Agness joining us tonight. It is the Fever in Las Vegas. It is a 9:30 tip. You'll hear Eddie with the pregame at 9:15. Scott, let's begin with this. I know that the balloting says otherwise, but I think now it has been cemented, at least in the minds around here. Kelsey Mitchell's the most valuable player in the WNBA this year, is she not?
It sure seems like it, but it all goes back to that old adage: is who's most valuable versus who had the best season.
Right, I get it.
Right? Like we talk about that every award season. But and to me, if anything, I would have said Nafisa Collier. If I had a vote, I would have given it to her, given the fact that she had her best career year. Minnesota was the best team. But if you take it literally for its meaning, most valuable, the Fever are nowhere close to where they are right now, still playing without Kelsey Mitchell.
Yeah, the way that Kelsey Mitchell has been able to score in different areas, and, you know, whether it be, I mean, she's obviously very aggressive and very quick at getting to the basket. She can shoot from the outside. One of the things that I'm curious about, Scott, and we were talking about this earlier, and it's hard to bring it up because it sounds like, A, like a lazy narrative, and B, like it's an indicting narrative on Caitlin Clark, which is not intended to be at all. But when you look at the way that they have played in the last month, are the Fever right now playing better as a team than they did at any point this year?
I think so, only because it felt like the season never really got off its ground.
Yeah,
right?
fair.
Because you had so many issues, and so I don't think we ever saw the full potential or anything close to that. I go back, Jake, to the first week of training camp where Caitlin and Demiris Dontas both had injuries and were out. So right away, you're dealing with that. But the remarkable thing is just how they've continued to play at this high level. Like, you keep thinking they're due for that 30-point blowout where you're just like, well, it wasn't their night. But these games have all been competitive. They stayed in the fight, given all their limitations. And I thought it was interesting. I was curious how some of them have been holding up. So I even asked Lexi Hull today just at shoot-around, which we just wrapped up. And she was like, yeah, my body is really going through it. I'm having to do all these extra measures, but still no excuse for keep going. But I can't imagine a player like her or Mitchell or Aaliyah Boston. They've played in every game. The physicality they deal with, and I give Aaliyah Boston also a lot of credit. I think she's played with a lot more of an edge and a feistiness that has carried her to a better performance here in this postseason as well.
Scott, when you look at the injuries the Fever have had and the number of roster combinations they've had to use, and Stephanie White having to, you know, at sometimes probably have name tags for everybody during practice. Have they reinvented the style that they wanted to play, or has it been, look, this is who we are and this is how we're going to play? It's just the faces are going to have to be different.
Yeah, they've made some small tweaks on the fringes, and I think especially early on a month ago when they were bringing in, 3 hardship players in a matter of a week, they really had to simplify and even not have too much of an offense when many of them are out there. But I think that has changed a ton going into this postseason. They had 4 days between games entering the playoffs, and so that was a time finally where Coach White and her staff had time to add some new plays. And the main thing she stressed was to become more unpredictable, because she felt like they were very predictable leading up to that, given what they had to do. And by the way, I want to go back to Kelsey, and we talk about her offense. I think the thing that's shined through too is the level in which she's elevated her defensive play and taken on some of the best offensive players on the other side this season as well. And then I'd even add in a third thing to what's made her season so spectacular, Jake, and that's while she's quiet by nature, kind of like a Pascal Siakam, she has emerged and become a vocal leader and willing to speak up at various times, more to the point where she's certainly one of the most valuable players in the league with all that she does on both ends of the floor for this group.
And by the way, how good has Odyssey Sims been as well, especially here in the postseason, I think, right?
Yeah, I even asked Stephanie White about that today, and I'm like, how much of it is just fit and opportunity? Because we talk about that with these pros, right? How many times do you see some elite-level college player, and then they just don't pan out, or maybe even take the Colts quarterback, like it just doesn't pan out in the first stop, or Daniel Jones, and you need that second opportunity to figure it out. And Odyssey Sims is a veteran player in this league, but she was without a job for a month, and right away, this team also wouldn't be where they are without her, both with her scoring, and I think so much of what she does is it's attacking and getting the defense on their heels, and then that opens things up for everyone else along the perimeter.
Scott, when you look at Scott Agness is our guest, Fieldhouse Files. Look, Las Vegas, and maybe one of the things that benefited Indiana late in the year is some of the players that they were having to go out and acquire because they're veterans. They've kind of been through the rigor, right? And they've been through personal, journey to get to reinvent themselves and get this new lease in terms of the minutes that they're getting. And maybe that also catapults Indiana a little bit. But let's talk about from Las Vegas's standpoint. They didn't just, the Fever, win game one. I mean, they really controlled and made a statement in game one. What adjustments does Las Vegas do we anticipate seeing here in game two?
Yeah, I think the one we know is going to just happen naturally is we all expect A'ja Wilson to do what she does, being one of the best players in the league, right? So everything else, first of all, to me, it starts with them getting Indiana slowed down in fast break. The Fever were really able to dictate tempo, and after, especially early on where we saw the Aces miss so many bunnies around the hoop, then the Fever raced down the floor, and that's their style. They're number one in fast break points. They love to play fast. So I think the Aces need to slow them down, and really be able to then, on the other end, not just be so dependent on A'ja, because that's what we saw during the regular season when these teams two met. A'ja was solid, but the rest of the team were limited in what they contributed. So that, and then on top of that, I would add in, can you keep Kelsey Mitchell to, say, 25 points, which is impressive nonetheless, because for her to go off for 34 and for the rest of the Fever players to contribute the ways in which they did. I thought them limiting Aaliyah Boston was a success, but she was so impactful in other ways. But to me, it starts with scoring at a higher clip than their 40% and then slowing Indiana down and making them work in the half court much more often. It so resembles the Pacers, right? All this conversation, the similarities and overlaps are remarkable to me, Jake.
No, I would agree with that. And also, it all coming together late, right, where then you look at it and you go, man, how did we not see this all year long coming? Like once they had solidarity. From the Las Vegas standpoint, I thought A'ja Wilson, to your point, I mean, dynamic player, dynamic scorer, did not score the ball well, at least in terms of offensive efficiency in game one, but that kind of led to a balance elsewhere. I thought that they got the Aces – from Evans, for example. Jackie Young, can score the basketball. But did it almost, even though things were balanced out for Las Vegas, is it better served for Indiana if they're less spreading the wealth, so to speak, and you almost want to just hone in on A'ja Wilson? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was having that exact conversation this morning. It's like, are you good with her going for 35 and no other player with more than 8 points? And I think part of you are. Absolutely, because she's so dangerous also in distributing the ball. But if it's just her going, and Aaliyah, who's also played at South Carolina, so there's a lot of familiarity between those two players who were really battling it out. To me, that's the most fascinating matchup of this series. But yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that, quite frankly. And the player also they need is Chelsea Gray, who is well regarded as maybe the best point guard, best passing guard in the league for the last several years. And that backcourt of Gray and Young, for Aces to have success, I think needs to come up big time.
Scott, you've been around this team for most of the season, whether it's practice, shoot-around, or whatever. I don't want to talk about her as the coach. I want to talk about her as the person. I know Natalie Nakasi won the Coach of the Year, even though Stephanie White probably should have done it for just the X's and O's and just what all she had to do to put this team together. So off the court, as a person, what did Stephanie White do to make this team so collective and so together? Because I don't think it gets talked about enough of the job that she's done of just bringing this group together.
No, that's a good point. I think the reality is, in terms of like the voters and their 72, is unless even those of us that are there every day, we truly don't know all those little things in the locker room and that they've gone through, the hardships, even the fact that Stephanie White's mother-in-law passed away, and that's why she had to miss a couple of games. Like, in turn, that actually brought her and Kelsey Mitchell closer, because Mitchell lost her father last year. And Kelsey was talking about this after last game, is they're bonded by that shared experience and also their love of basketball and things like that. To me, I think Stephanie probably should have finished third in the Coach of the Year voting, just given all she's been through. But I think, number one, Steph has empowered each player to be their best versions of themselves. For example, you brought up Odyssey Sims earlier. When Odyssey stops driving and is deferring, Steph jumps on her for hey, look, we need you to be exactly who you are, because that's why we brought you in. And Jake, to Jake's point earlier, they specifically brought in veteran playoff-tested players because of their inexperience and their shortcomings elsewhere. At least they wouldn't have to figure out big game experience on the fly. But I think the confidence that Stephanie instills in all the players, I think the relatability, she's won championships. She's played at a high level. She knows this franchise inside and out from her previous time here as a player and coach. And so I think she takes the time to get to know these players on a personal basis. I go back to last fall, about a year ago. The primary goal was to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell, and it was not a done deal. It was not a given. And she poured into her, both starting from a personal standpoint, even before the basketball standpoint. And I think that has really resonated with these players, because when you feel that connection beyond basketball, it only helps what you're doing on the court when things get tough, when you go through adversity.
Scott, there's been this, I don't even know where this came about, but I started reading, a couple months ago, mostly on social media, which that's a dangerous enough place as it is. But I start reading all these articles about how, like, oh, man, like people in the entertainment industry and in the hospitality industry in Las Vegas are talking about how, like, nobody's going to Vegas and Vegas is dying and whatever else. I have no idea if that's true. It's been a while since I've been there, like a year or so. Fact or fiction, like things seem slower on Las Vegas Boulevard?
I'd say fact, for sure. I walked around the pool area. About half of it was empty. Now, given it was, Monday afternoon, but still here, I mean, there's no days or times of, people are here at all times of the year. Usually it's bustling with conventions. Maybe it's not a big convention season, but no, I think that's definitely fact for sure, even though the airline prices didn't reflect that.
Yeah, no kidding, right? What's the temperature out there right now?
Not too bad. I think it's like 85 or so.
Okay, yeah.
Although, as you know, once you kind of get inside, you don't really have an excuse to go outside. So
basically, if you're walking around the pool and there's not many people there, just more reason for you to walk around on the thong? Is that what you're getting at?
No, I will not be doing that whatsoever. I just wanted to get some natural sunlight after feeling like you're stuffed inside for a couple days.
Scott and his Speedo just hanging around, walking around the strip. All right, Scott, tonight, 9:30, it is the Aces and the Fever, 9:15 pregame on this show. Appreciate it, man.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
All right, Scott Agness joining us from Fieldhouse Files. We come back. J&V is here. I believe, actually, he's going to have a former NFL quarterback that has had his eyes on Daniel Jones joining him on the show. We'll talk about that and more on the crossover, brought to you by Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com next. John, what would you say, JMV is here, what would you say is the signature song of Pearl Jam?
I would say Alive. That was their breakthrough.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah.
Although, boy, this one's way up there, though. It's got to be one. I mean, Jeremy's up there, but it's probably this, right?
Jeremy's up there.
But I would agree. I think.
Do you remember there was an urban legend that Eddie Vedder came up with the lyrics and the thoughts of the song Alive because he was hanging off the Space Needle in Seattle. Did you ever hear that story? But I think it was a story that actually had its roots from when he was hanging from the top of the stage. I think it was at, what's the Southern California, the desert, Coachella?
Coachella,
I think it was Coachella or something like that. He was hanging from the stage because his microphone cord got snagged. And he climbed up there and got it, and he was hanging from it. I think that's where that story actually comes from.
I know that you have a deep respect for Pearl Jam. Were you a big Pearl Jam fan, per se?
Yeah. I was always more Soundgarden and Alice in Chains than Pearl Jam. But
what about Stone Temple Pilots? You like Stone Temple Pilots?
I did. I like Weiland a great deal. When they played, if you remember, back a number of years ago, and Weiland was still with us when they played Carb Day. That was one of the better Carb Day performances of all time, in the rain, a matter of fact.
They, Stone Temple Pilots, I liked them, I liked them even more than Pearl Jam. But I will say this, and I know you were there for it.
Yeah.
Last year when I went to that Pearl Jam show, I was like, okay, I get it. I mean, they were phenomenal live entertainers.
They were. Well, and Stone Temple Pilots' album Core is one of the greatest of the 1990s. One of the greatest. And people would suggest that's not their best, but I loved it. That was just packed full of great music.
What do you have lined up on the big program today? I know you said you talked to one guy that's got a pretty good
Boomer Esiason will join us, too. 6 years of watching Daniel Jones. Did you watch Daniel Jones last night, guys, with Peyton and Eli? Yeah, he looked about as excited as me trying to take an algebra test last night, being a part of that. But who cares as long as he can play quarterback?
That's the thing. Like he doesn't exactly exude personality, but he's getting the job done. Right?
Yeah, it's weird too because he grew up in Fairhope, Alabama, right, and knew Phillip Rivers really well. Is that kind of the story of Daniel Jones?
That's right. And then
Phillip Rivers is this gregarious personality, and Daniel Jones.
Well, and then obviously he's got the coaching connection with the Mannings, and play with Eli, and all of it, right? There were a lot of things intertwining between them.
Do you think Peyton and Eli, that thing is as good as it was when it first started?
That is a great question. Do you think it's? I think it's probably still as good, except for that. I think now people have it's become. I think people almost forget it's on.
I think they leave a lot on the table. If Jeff Daniels would be, it seems like sometimes he doesn't really hear what's being said. I think he is so good and would have been even better if it were easier of a connection. It just seems like it's kind of a little bit awkward sometimes. Although Daniel Jones, at least Daniel Jones had an actual camera, but Jeff Daniels is going off his computer camera
I would
or
agree
FaceTime
with that.
or something.
Like there are a lot of times where it gets a little bit awkward.
But I love those guys. Those guys, I like listening to them talk, but sometimes you also want to hear the play-by-play of the game that's going on too.
Well, their reactions are usually pretty good too.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
All right, John's up next. Boomer Esiason. What time for Boomer, John?
5 o'clock for Boomer.
5 o'clock hour for Boomer Esiason, and we will be back with you at noon tomorrow. I thank you for listening to Query & Company.